Good Thursday to you, everybody. Incom 785. Welcome to week boom 4. How's everybody doing? You doing okay? All right. Let's get this thing started with the second and probably the last cup of espresso for today. Don't want to be too caffeinated, just sufficiently. Okay. Hello, everybody. How you doing? Welcome. So for this video, we're going to talk a little bit about what we're going to do this week, but we're going to talk, I will talk, and you will listen and you can give me feedback about what we're going to do next week, which is our residency week at Regent, which is, it's a good chunk of work, but it is a lot of fun. Okay, very briefly, the readings for this week, we've got readings in Wilson, in Cialdini. I've got some additional readings for you, and I have not put up the discussion questions. I'll put them up today, but I will throw out an additional bonus discussion question. Maybe an option of one discussion question or another. Because what we're going to look at this week is last week we sort of looked at some of the theoretical aspects of public relations. This week we're going to look at PR campaigns, things that work and things that don't work. And within that context, one of the elements that I want to discuss with you is how it is that you describe what it is you're trying to promote. All right, and after audience identification, so you're talking to the right people. I mean, that's what probably the first and most significant hurdle, because you can have a great message, but if you're talking to this group and this group over here is really the one that needs to hear it, this group is going to be like, well, why are you talking to me? Okay, after demographic identification, the question is what message will fit in the ear of that demographic. Message identification. And one element of message identification that I want to have you take a look at this week is how it is that people view certain signs, symbols, and expressions. And what I mean by signs and symbols is, we're talking like actual visuals, the things that they see. And then, even though spoken, although technically not a sign in the sense that it's written down, words, okay, expressions. And there is a tendency within the human brain to assign greater validity to numbers as opposed to words. Now, this is not universal, all right? And depending on the demographic, numbers will mean more or less. For example, young children, they have very limited operational understanding of numbers and percentages, and they're going to and words are much better used by way of sign and symbol. People in certain education levels, certain income levels, okay, but generally speaking, this is a truism. People find they invest validity in numbers over words. So I'll give you two additional readings alongside of Wilson and Cialdini. A little short blog post that goes back a number of years, but it's sort of tongue-in-cheek. That is the debate of words versus numbers. And then a piece that I wrote and posted and then did a media appearance for about how not to get fooled by numbers, and notably the replication crisis within the social sciences. It's not as widely discussed as it needs to be. A few years back, it was the hot topic du jour, but there is within the social sciences, depending on which branch and which subject, the ability to replicate a study. That is, you take the methodology that the investigators used, and you take the subject matters. I mean, obviously, because they did it, you can't go back in time, but you take the same sort of parameters by way of subject matter, and you repeat the test within the social sciences, somewhere between 30 and sometimes as high as 70%, 3 out of 10 or 7 out of 10 tests don't replicate. That is, the results that they produce are statistically significantly different than the first go around. This is a problem. This is notably a problem if what you're doing is trying to establish external validity, which is what you're up to as a researcher, whether you're in PR or in something else. You want to say, we've looked at this test segment of the people and our results are applicable to the whole population, because you're trying to, and I don't mean the whole population like everybody in the United States, but the whole population that you're trying to address. All right. Well, if you can't replicate the results, that's an indicator that it is not applicable to the whole population. It has low external validity, and that's a problem. And that's that's also a problem in terms of how we make government policy, how social trends and movements get kicked off and get rolling. Okay, because we have built-in assumptions about things that may necessarily not be true. Now, I'll tell you on the upfront, in this piece that I linked to, that I wrote, How Not to Get Fooled by the Numbers, you may detect a distinct political leaning on my part. Okay, that's all right. That's not why I'm having you read the piece. You can agree or disagree with me about where I'm, where I happen to find myself politically, and that's fine. I mean, I'm never going to ask you any questions that push my political position or push against yours. Now, I may, in the course of our work together, I may ask you questions that push on the conclusions that you've drawn based on the methodology that you've employed. See, I want to encourage you as researchers to first and foremost be investigators, not advocators. Outside of your research, yes, of course, you can advocate. I have things that I advocate for. All right. You'll be a better advocator if you operate as an impartial investigator, because I don't know who, and I don't know where, and I don't know exactly, what or why, but there are going to be people that don't agree with you and that oppose what it is you're trying to get done, or may or may not respond to what it is you're trying to get done. All right. The more firmly grounded your approaches are as an advocator, the more you'll be protected against those who either you're hoping to have respond, and by what I mean by protected is you want them to respond, or oppose you. If you start from advocacy, and this taints your methodology, this will ultimately weaken your position wherever you're at politically. All right, so I wanted to make that clear because I was reading through the article, and I thought, I don't mean to give you stuff that sounds partisan. That's not the point of the read, and it's certainly never the point of the class. I'm not trying to be partisan in what I give you. Okay, so I'll give you, as we did last time, a bonus question or two, and this just, pick up the extra points, and great. All right. Okay. Let us take and I'll post questions today. Let's take a look at residency week. The residency schedule sheet is up, right? This is a required part of the class. Okay. So, you should be booked and ready to go. I hope that this is not coming as a surprise at this point to anybody. That would be terrible. I'd be like, whoa, what? It's like one of those nightmares that you have, that you suddenly realize you're supposed to be somewhere and supposed to be doing something, and you're not. Okay, that's not what we want. Okay, so we'll do our residency week during week 5. All right, we are going to be we're going to be on campus in the Divinity building. Okay, did I post the room number? Yeah, I will confirm the room number for you and send it out to you in an announcement. But the Divinity building is really, really easy to find, and I've used a geo tag, you know, a Google tag, okay, to help you locate it. Yeah, okay. Now I'm looking, and we do have a room number. We're going to be in room 172, and I'll tell you what I'll do. I will update this instructional sheet and then post it again. Okay. But that's where we're going to be, and we will meet there for the 11th, 12th, and 13th. Okay. And we meet at 9 o'clock, and you know, we're scheduled to go to 4. If we end a little early and we've gotten everything done, great. All right, everybody go, yeah, okay, that's great. And so, first of all, you know, what do you bring? All right, please bring your textbooks. The only textbook that I mean, you can bring it because it has some nice outlines in terms of how to construct your strategy, but the only one that I'm not requiring you to bring is the Van Ruler. All right, that one we're not going to be using, but we will go through, for instance, the Courbet text. We're going to be using Cialdini, and we're going to be using the other Cialdini that's listed on there that we haven't touched yet, and that's the book on influence. All right, we're going to be using this. Wow, it really dims the light. We're going to be using that in the course of the 3 days together. Okay. So, you know, haul them along, and we'll you know, I'll have lectures. I'm sorry, I'm trying to type and speak at the same time. I'll have lectures prepared for you each of those days. Okay. Bring something that you can, you know, produce papers on, a laptop, or you know, I've moved away from laptops more and more. I'm just using, you know, a tablet with a portable keyboard. I find it's much easier to haul around. I find that it, you know, holds battery better. Storage is never now a problem because of external drives if I want huge storage. Whatever works for you, but you got to have something upon which you can write and edit. All right, that you need to have. Okay. All right. So what are we gonna do? All right. So overview, first day. You know, we're gonna get to know each other. Part of the purpose, the design of this residency is to help you, each of you, get to know each other as a cohort. Okay. And you know, because you're gonna want to work and support each other throughout your professional trajectory that is beyond Regent. All right. And so please come prepared to introduce yourself, explain, you know, what you've done in communications thus far, and what do you want to do when you finish with your degree. Okay. And everybody else, you know, come prepared to ask pointed questions, not in the sense that you're going to be like, oh, are you sure about that? But in sort of probing, and yeah, hey, I'm interested in that, or I've never heard that, or have you thought about, you know, all right. And we'll spend about an hour and a half doing that. And if we have, you know, time left over, then we'll have coffee, which, you know, is always a good idea by me. Okay. So then to kick off that morning, we'll talk about not-for-profits, which we haven't touched yet in terms of our coursework, which we do. We have an hour for lunch each day. There are a lot of places to eat on campus. There are places around campus that you can easily get to and back from within an hour. All right. So that's not a problem. Then we're going to talk about marketing and social media. And then, you know, since I'm not posting it, I will post it online, but we'll talk about the material that we're going to be covering during week 5, which is the week that we're in. All right. I'll talk to you a little bit about the midterm exam. You know, we'll go through a review. I don't hand out a review. I used to. I don't do that anymore because what I found was people were merely studying the items on the review to the exclusion of everything else that we were covering. And you might be saying, you know, duh. Well, no. Look, everybody. This is your, you know, this is your professional development. Think less about hole punches on a ticket, you know, in terms of how you approach your education, and think more about pulling in, you know, what you can. And hang on a second, which, you know, reminds me of a title. Think more about pulling in everything that you can, because the more that you do, realizing that everything connects, the stronger, the more flexible, the more agile you will be as a professional. And yes, of course, I know it's work. Okay, I know. But life is work. I mean, it's, you know, what do you want? It's just a job. Okay. And I'll have a writing exercise for you. Okay. And that's will be our first day. I'm going to talk to you about writing and how it is that you read. And I don't mean just, you know, like see spot run. Because these are your core and most essential tools as a communicator. It used to be, all right, that the task that faced graduate students and then professionals beyond graduate school was you had to learn you had to learn how to find the material that you needed to work with. That is, where was it bloody located? Because it used to be, you know, in specialized libraries before it was all put online. Right? So which buildings, which portions of which buildings, and there weren't like big maps posted out front saying, if you're looking for material about blah 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 blah, you need to go. I mean, you know, you may remember back, depending on your age, in school having to learn the Dewey Decimal System for library catalogs, which is not necessarily intuitively logical. It's like, you know, YRN 175 or something like, okay. So you had to learn where to go to find the stuff. And then when you got into the place to find the stuff, you had to learn how the stuff was cataloged, grouped, and categorized. Okay. That was the major skill set, the major hurdle before you started learning about how to analyze this stuff. Now, I did my first PhD in medieval history. And in addition to learning, you know, how to find stuff in specialty libraries, then there was the learning of the languages to decode the stuff. Your challenge is different today because of the tools that are available. Now you can find stuff just by picking up your phone. Everything is connected. All right. You can translate stuff through the same thing, through your phone. So you don't have to have the, you know, real high bar in the language skills. But here's what you do have to have. So previously the challenge was where to get the information and then what to do with it. Now the challenge is, since the information is everywhere, the first hurdle that you have to get over is developing a skill set that lets you determine, because you don't have infinite amounts of time in a day, what is beef and what is BS, what is useful and what is nonsense. Okay. And the key to that is learning how to read quickly and critically, and then learning how to synthesize all of this available information together, which is to write quickly and critically. You hone those two skills, okay, and you will do well in whatever field that you choose. So that's why we're gonna spend time on that. So the next morning we'll review what we did. Okay, then you're going to present your semester projects, and you'll present them as a group. And again, please come prepared. All right, and everybody else, be prepared, you know, to ask questions. Right, they're going to have lunch. Okay, and then to make sure everybody has time on the back end, we'll present semester project. Then on our last day, I'll talk to you a little bit about signs and semiotics. Okay, these are the keys to strategic communication. Okay, and from your first day, you will be getting feedback from me and feedback from everybody else for your presentations. You will take that feedback, and then you will make whatever adjustments are asked about or are recommended, and then you will bring that to the tweaked, renewed, refined presentation to the group. And you'll do that, and we'll break it into 2 parts. And then we'll close and say so long, farewell, and then we will see each other on Canvas for the rest of the semester. Okay, and I will upload the new sheet, but again, the room is Divinity 172, and the Google tag, if you click it, will take you right to where you want to go. Okay, and it's right next to the comms building. You can't miss it. A beautiful building. Okay, all right. If you have any questions, please email me or text me and say, and tell me, hi, this is so and so from 785. I'm not quite sure about, blah, 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 and we'll take it from there. All right, let's take a look at the questions from last week. Here again, especially in strategic communication, this is absolutely critical to you. In plain, simple English, define the following terms: quantitative research, qualitative research, primary source data, secondary source data. Valerie, quantitative research is a methodological approach. All right, methodological. I'd like you to use maybe 1 or 2 syllabic words if you can. To gathering and analyzing data to identify patterns, evaluate hypotheses, formulate predictions, and employ statistical instruments for result interpretation. It is often used in surveys, experiments. Okay, so this is Creswell and Creswell, and you were absolutely right, Valerie. This is the textbook definition. Here's what I want you to do, though. I want you to bring that down. You know what I think I'm going to do, maybe as part of our exercises, I'm going to have you run your writing through a Flesch-Kincaid reading level grader. If you are not familiar with this, with the Flesch-Kincaid scale, okay, if you, it's called the Flesch-Kincaid grade scale. When you get into, if you write in, especially in journalism, and many publications say, okay, we do not want something that would score higher than, and I'm not making this up here, than I've had some magazines say, we don't want something that scores any higher than a 4th grade reading level. Now, many of them, 7th to 9th grade is the max. Okay. Valerie, just looking at yours, I've just run it through the Flesch-Kincaid readability scale. Yours is at 19.5, and this would be a median age with assuming a college education for someone who's 25 years old. Okay. Now, you're right in your answer, so I'm not picking on you. But a score of 19, and I didn't include this, so I'm not knocking you for that. That's way too high. Okay, the exercise here is not to define quantitative research. Everybody can do that. I want you to put it in terms that just anybody you would stop on the street, that they can understand. Okay. Okay. I'm looking through some of these here. Jennifer. Okay. When I think of quantitative research, this is Jennifer. When I think of quantitative research, I think of numbers. It's the empirical evidence that adds credibility to research papers. Okay. Same thing. So for everybody, I want you to take a look at this again and put these terms into very, very simple, plain English. All right. Question number 2. Describe and categorize the research methods used by Justborn and Cognate PR to sell the American public more high-calorie, non-nutritive, highly processed food. Okay, yes. Is there a bias expressed to that question? Yeah, because the state of American health is not so good. If you look at across the averages, I mean, a lot of, a good chunk of it's genetic, and then a lot of it's behavioral. So that big top of the bell curve in terms of the bad health is behavioral. And all right. Anyway, let's get to the question. Let's see. Who have we not? Benjamin Justborn and CON-APR use mixed method or combination of qualitative, quantitative research methods drawing from both primary and secondary sources to shape their campaign to promote high calorie, high processed peeps, quote, food. So I think you're feeling me, Benjamin. Their primary research included conducting surveys to learn how consumers use peeps, revealing that 60% were eaten while 40% were used in recipes, crafts, or decorations. What surprised me, who would use these things in a recipe? I mean, I could see, you're just sort of pulling them out of the bag, but these surveys therefore yielded quantitative data. They also gathered qualitative insights about their target audience, mothers aged 25 to 54 who were fond to value creating meaningful holiday experiences. Okay, and so on and so forth. Okay, good. All right. So for everybody else, I don't know that I'm going to ask you a test question about a particular campaign that you read about, but I might ask you about, what would constitute the qualitative or quantitative part of a campaign. All right. Question number 3. What does Cialdini mean when he uses the term psychological shoot or target shooting? Find and link to an example of online target shooting. Let's see. Who do we take here? This is an interesting answer, Kenesha. You said, when I prepared to answer this question, it took me a while to understand these two concepts fully, which is why I'm just completing the post, LOL. Okay, yeah, that's fine. When Cialdini uses psychological shoots, he means that people can be guided mentally particular behaviors or decisions without even realizing it's happening. Exactly. He says, I will have focused you on the trait of stubbornness, sending you down a single psychological shoot constructed unfairly to confirm my judgment. And this is his, discussion about how he was a palm reader back in the day. All right. He states, when someone is told that they behave in a certain way, they will start to think back on occasions which they acted to confirm that is true. This is called confirmation bias. News outlets, now this has become their bread and butter. I mean, I don't think it's a good thing. So if you're hearing, I start in my voice, you're right. All right. But to their business model has become find the audience. Their business model has become find the audience segment that ideologically they're going to identify with, and then construct stories that push the bias to confirm the bias of that audience segment. Okay. While Cialdini uses target shooting, he means that you are finding effective and strategic ways to guide your audience to give a response how they feel a behavior towards something. Okay, and so here's your example: target shooting, ICDI college commercial. This was a huge part of my childhood. I used to see the commercials constantly. I find this to be a fitting example of target shooting because the man in the commercial will have you thinking that all you do is sit on a couch when in reality you're being productive with your life. You are just taking a break. He honestly had me question my life growing up, had me wondering, am I always sitting around on the couch watching TV? Interesting. Now, I'm not going to roll the video here, but that's a very, very good example. Okay, well done. Well said. All right, question 4. According to Cialdini, how can certain questions increase the likelihood of desired outcomes? And this is, the facet, the operational component, of target shooting, and not shooting as a, but shunt, because they shunt, shoot, like slide down a chute, like chutes and ladders. Natalie, according to Cialdini, in order to get a desired outcome, he mentions there is no need to change the person's attitude, experience, or belief. As a matter of fact, Cialdini mentions there's no need to change anything about a person whatsoever. The only thing that Cialdini says to alter is the person's mind and thinking process. This process will get the person to decide what you want them to decide in the moment. In other words, it makes it seem like it was their idea. Okay. The example that Cialdini uses is an example of a soft drink that is new. The thought that Cialdini mentions that might run through the person's mind is the thought that the beginning and trying new possibilities. The evidence found this process was from Bolkin and Anderson research. The two demonstrated research on how a marketer could gain the chance of finding surveys by persuading participants in the opening of the survey. Yes, good answer. And by the way, one of the things that you want to watch out for, okay, if you're trying to conduct a survey in which you want to find data that's useful, is that sort of tactic. You want to move away from, stay away from leading questions. Now, these sorts of leading questions that move to a desired outcome, these are used frequently in the political space. And they're used as part of what are often called push polls. So somebody gets a phone call and they say, "Hi, we're taking a poll about blah, blah, blah. This will only take a minute." My response is, "No, thanks, because I teach this for a living." Okay. But many people go, "Oh, yeah, sure." They're pushing a particular position, a candidate, a policy, and the purpose of the poll is not to find out what the people think. The purpose of the poll is to plant the idea in their head about what to think, to increase the outcome decrease the likelihood, of a desired outcome. Okay, it's not ethical, I believe, but it's perfectly legal. All right, lastly, because we're coming up on a half an hour, the bonus question. I've given you something to read, and this is only if you like. Okay. On children and vaccine, piece that I wrote, and then I think I don't remember if I published in a magazine, which magazine, or I did do a big media push appearance with this on a Christian network, in which I highlight some quantitative research shortcomings with how numbers for vaccine harm versus vaccine benefit are reported to the public. I asked you to pick one of those that you think has the potential to negatively affect someone's ability to make an informed decision, and then, in your considered opinion, were any of the quantitative research issues mentioned done for deceptive purposes, or are they just product of common quantitative research shortcomings? Okay, sampling error is one of them. Okay, Cynthia, let's take you. The mentioned shortcomings, one I believe that most potentially negatively affect the public's ability to make informed decisions on giving vaccines is how data is collected. If more data is collected on disease prevention than injury of vaccines, how can parents truly make informed decisions? Yeah, and if you have been watching, and again, this is not political, okay? We have been seeing congressional hearings in which it's revealed that there was a whole bunch of data concerning risks to the heart, especially for young men who took the vaccines, that was not disclosed. All right. As a parent of 4, I rely heavily in the past on statistics when it came to making healthy decisions for my children. I've become better at researching and understanding the issues. And then I asked, do you think this is intentional, or do you think this is just, institutions and organizations make mistakes. Okay. So Cynthia writes, this is difficult for me to say because I always want to believe in the greater good behind people's decisions and actions. However, in the case of data collection and reporting, I do not believe the issue came from sampling error or research shortcomings. Rather, it seems strategically done to deceive for profit, which all stems from corporate greed. Okay. Now, I'm not going to argue with anybody's conclusion or position about that. What I would encourage you to do is to just go another layer deeper and try to ground your conclusion in evidence. Do you find evidence that goes, yeah, okay, those people that are running the research, because they've got all the credential letters after their name, I assume that they're versed enough in standard quantitative research practices that they should know, hey, you can't undercount the negative and overcount the positive and expect to get an accurate picture. So do they say, do you say, well, they just have to they recognize that this is the best they have to work with, and then they're transparent about that? They say to the public, hey, this is the best we have to work with because we're getting the data over here on the positive, we're getting the data over here on the negative. Or again, digging down deeper from the evidence, you go, yeah, okay, anybody who's competent, they wouldn't miss this. And the fact that they did miss this leads me to believe that they did so on purpose, or what sometimes is referred to as premeditated ignorance. They just didn't bother to find out because they didn't want to find out. That's what I'll ask you to do in whatever conclusions that you make. Just make sure that you dig to find sufficient evidence that supports where you're at. Okay, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of the week. I will repost the sheet, but remember, we're in Divinity 172. And then I'm so much looking forward to seeing you at Regent. This is always, lots of fun to get together and to coalesce as a cohort and to get to know each other. And I'm really looking forward to your research project. So have a fantastic week. Travel safely, okay? And I will see you in Virginia Beach. God bless. Bye-bye.